The first question I'd like to start with is how do I define religion and how a student should understand my definition. And the thing I find most interesting about this question is it reminds me of what I do the first day of class when I teach religions of the world, is I ask students to define religion. And it's their first homework assignment, and they take a blank piece of paper and write out ideas, and they bring it to class the next day. I don't need to define religion for any of my students. They know what it is. We all know what religion is. I just brought today a few of the answers they give. What is religion? It's a driving force in human life. It gives purpose. It's a focus of ultimacy, ultimate concern. It gives us a sense of stability, security about what's going to happen to us when we die. Religion marks out the major events in our lives. It shapes our communities. It gives comfort in crisis. It tells us who we are, answers questions of identity, and it gives us a discipline in life. This is a huge definition, and I think my students do very well. Every semester I'll find one new thing usually that students haven't mentioned in semesters before. But what I like about this definition, actually in contrast to some book definitions, is that it is so huge. And religion is like that. There are so many elements of religion, and one student may only think of 2 or 3 of these at the most, but if you have 35 students, even if they mostly come from the same religious background as most of my students do, they were born in Iowa, have lived in Iowa their whole lives, even for them there's diversity. The last one I mentioned, religion gives a discipline in life. That was mentioned for the first time this fall by a student, and I've been asking this question for about 10 years. And I really liked that answer because I'd been reading a bit about the rule of St. Benedict, the discipline of the monks in the late medieval age. And I found it very interesting that the students would think of discipline and actually use that word, because for many of us, that kind of life, the monastic life, seems like somebody else's religion. And yet, it was a very powerful force, and even in Iowa there are monasteries today which continue to be powerful forces in persons' lives. I think for myself, what I like to focus on for the meaning of religion and where I teach most is with questions of community, how religion organizes for us networks, we could say, provides lines of connection and meaning so that in a given community we know who we are in relation to each other and have the appropriate boundaries between us articulated. And the most interesting boundary for me over the years that I have been studying religion has been the boundary of gender. How men and women experience religion differently. And so when I ask students what is religion, I also ask them to write about, is religion the same for a man as for a woman? And usually at the beginning of the semester when they answer that, they'll say yes, because they look at their family, they look at their brothers and their sisters, their mother, their father, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and they'll think, well, is my father's religion different than my mother's? Is my sister's different than mine? And it won't immediately occur to them that there is any difference. And by the end of the semester, because one of the things I do is to trace the gendering of religion, their answers are very different. And I actually have them rewrite this assignment. I call it before and after. It's sort of the makeover assignment in class. And by the end of the semester, they've moved quite far in their thinking to the point where they look at their initial answers and say, well, no, religion very much is gendered. And as we have studied Hinduism and Buddhism, and even when we study Christianity, which was their home religion for many of them, they now look at it differently and say, yes, what a religion is for a man is different than it is for a woman.